after the protest at Five Corners, we kind of got a little call to action there and wanted to continue to get people together and keep the momentum going for fighting this systematic oppression and racism that we see in our everyday lives. We started the Young Activists for Social Justice of Martha's Vineyard a couple weeks ago.
When I was like, we should have a march, show people that there are people who care and we can like get together as a community. I was not expecting it to be that big. Seeing people that I've never seen before, that was just amazing to see. And like the feeling was just, I've never felt that before. I was very surprised and like I was grateful that that happened and that it went the way it did.
I showed up really early because I get nervous about these things. I showed up at like 11:30. And I was spraying down the masks and the waters and all that stuff, trying to get that stuff going. And I was getting nervous because I was so early. I was like, what if no one comes? And that got me going. And then more and more people started to come in. I think a lot of people of color feel like they're not seen, especially living in Martha's Vineyard, where it's predominantly white. So I think that this movement also tells kids, we see you, we see what you're going through, and it's not right, and we're going to change it.
I joined the Young Activists for Social Justice of Martha's Vineyard only a few days ago. I saw the poster for the protest and just basically asked if there was anything I could do to help, and then next thing I knew, I was leading it with them. But yeah, I'm planning on going to town meeting tonight to ask about the police budget in particular. A huge part of the movement for me is the component of like defunding the police, because I'm not saying that like this is anything that's going to happen overnight, but like the policing system in our country is definitely rooted in anti-Blackness and racism. And like it was created in the beginning as like slave patrols, and that sentiment has carried throughout. And I think that it's important that we reevaluate like the way our relationship with policing in this country, if we can find new and creative ways to like ensure safety for people, what policing like should look like, and how we like fix a system that, I mean, it's essentially doing what it was designed to do in some ways. So like, how do we fix a system that's, you know, so broken?
I'd love to just have people of color not fearing the police every day that they're out and about. You know, just fighting for those rights that everybody deserves. So, and the way that we're kind of doing that is just bringing it to the forefront, making people think about it, you know, about how it affects their lives, how it affects their loved ones' lives. We're going to help people register to vote, you know, young people. I think that is a big issue, people not getting out to the polls and voting for, or being educated in who they're voting for. And I think that's big. That's going to be some action we'll be taking. I also wanted to speak on like the police department. I wanted to thank them, you know, for supporting us during that march and, you know, cutting off the roads. And I think the way our police department differs is we do have that personal level where we could speak to them, you know, human to human rather than to an officer. Like it can kind of just go beyond, but it definitely is the system that is corrupt and anti-Black.
The police system as a whole is something that a lot of Black people fear no matter where it is. And I think what is good about the island is that I do personally know like police officers, and like I know the police chief personally. He's like the head of the NAACP. Like there are differences here, but it doesn't excuse the fact that like policing in this country was built on racism, and like there's still racism on this island. Like it might not be as apparent as other places, but I've definitely experienced it with peers at school, with the way that things are taught in classrooms, with the way that I've interacted in spaces. So yeah, it's different, but we're still in America.
I think it's a blessing and a curse because, as you guys said, like we know the officers, we have relatives who are officers, but like the fact that we don't see police brutality and all that stuff like makes it so people who live here aren't like aware of what happens every day in the real world, like in like off the island and like in America. Sometimes like it's harder for people to like understand like what's going on, and I feel like that's why on the island it's like so easy for us to just like look past it and disconnect from the real world. I do want to like take this like off island and like show people that there are people just like them, even on a small little island.
a lot of issues intersect, and I think that having the drummers there and having the support of tribal members who aren't necessarily Black was great, because it's just standing in solidarity with other people of color that share issues too. Black people are fighting for equality with the same structure that Native American people, Latina people, Asian people, all people of color are facing. And just as long as the job is done at the end of the day, that people have equality and that people are seen as people, that's what matters.
I know that on Friday, on Juneteenth, there's another march and protest that was organized by a young woman who's white. And I think that, and even just like not people of color, like you can be East Asian, a person of color, you don't have the same experience as a Black person or someone who identifies as Latinx or someone who, is Hawaiian or whatever. Like, person of color means so much. So I think that if you're really fighting against anti-Blackness and racism, like, and you're centering Black voices and you're making sure to like uplift Black experiences and trying to support the movement, it's great, because it shouldn't fall all on Black people to organize these events. So that's my opinion.
I heard that people were taking knees around the country June 1st at 5 p.m. as respect and bringing that horrific event back to its meaning. Honestly, I was thinking how long it was and how extremely painful and hard it was for just me, and I have never experienced anything like that, and I will never be able to relate to that because of the color of my skin. And then I was just thinking about how heavy it must be for people of color. We ignore a lot of problems in our country for pride and shame, I think, and I think a lot of that is handed down. And I think the first step that I took in trying to make a change, or at least understanding it better, and I think a first step a lot of people need to take, is being accountable. Accountable for just knowing your privilege, knowing what it means to be white in this country, and knowing just the history and educating yourself. I feel like in this march and in a lot of actions of mine speaking out, I need to be respectful, because I will never understand, and I do not want to come across as pretending to understand someone else's pain and someone else's sorrow, because it is really a major problem. I mean, I believe that slavery never really went away. It just, because we never dealt with it, it just kept evolving. We're always trying to attack the problem that's at hand when we're not really looking at the ongoing problem. I think we need to be consistent with our voice and keep inspiring people until we see that change.
I think white privilege gives you the ability to kind of sit back and observe what's going on, not really need to jump in and be an advocate or an ally. But I think that's what makes Martha's Vineyard special. We had all walks of life out there.
I definitely feel like a lot of people think that like Black Lives Matter is like a trend. Like on Instagram, people are just, you only see posts about like Black Lives Matter. I feel like when this happens, like when an officer kills a Black life. But my goal pretty much is to like keep this group going.
We're all, whether we'd like to admit it or not, like each of us is complicit in that system, and that it's important that we take action to fight for Black people and their rights and their unique experience in this country, and the ways in which they have been oppressed, and the ways in which they're viewed by not only the police, but by almost every system. We weren't just fighting against police brutality, but public health. Black people are disproportionately taken advantage of and mistreated in health practices, and public education. The school to prison pipeline disproportionately affects Black people. And so there's so many ways in which racism is a part of this country. We're just taking steps every day to recognize that and recognize the ways in which we can be actively anti-racist.
At the end, no, I felt like this is just the beginning, that our community loves us. There's so much love and there's so much strength and there's so much power in this community, and that everything's going to be good. We're going to get through this together.